Ashley.
Long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. Get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Never gonna lose, never gonna win. Long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in.
Wow, good morning. We are live. I say good morning. It's afternoon already, isn't it? Hello, Emma. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Ashley. Great to be here with you today. Great to be here with you.
And thank you so much for coming on. And this is going to be a really difficult conversation for me today because, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you let everybody know who you are and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Hi, Ashley. Well, hi, everybody. So my name is Emma Jane Taylor. I am the founder of a series of lifestyle businesses. So professionally, I'm involved in performing arts with children as young as 3 to 18. And also I work in the fitness industry. I'm very passionate as well about both of them. And we work with adults up until, I don't know, 104, even older. So my industry is very much geared around well-being. And that is looking at how the body works, how the mind works, and sort of putting it all together from a performance part. I'm a dancer by trade, and so fitness and dance is very much a big part of my personal life as well as my professional life. I also do a lot of mentoring and training with corporates and here in the UK and around the world, and have clients that I work with as their mentor, helping them get through blocks, difficulties, whether it be mental, emotional or physical, working together. So I've been in that industry maybe 25, 30 years now. That's something that I love. I have a great team of people that work with me on both businesses. So we are flat out constantly, as you can imagine, with that work. And what we're going to talk about now, of course, is probably more about my campaigning and my charity. So 7 years ago, I decided to speak up and out about my personal story of being abused as a child. And I think it was at a point where I felt a bit of an imposter, actually. You know, I was sort of sat in my business and loving my work. And I was working with, at that time, I was also presenting with That's TV as their presenter on the Wellbeing Show. And every week I'm interviewing people thinking, I feel a bit of an imposter because so many people have gone through such difficulties. And so have I, actually, but I've never talked about it. So I tiptoed in, started speaking up, started speaking out, got invited to speak at a football stadium. And there was about 300-400 people there. And wow. It went into a magazine. My story went into a magazine. They bought it, promoted it at this night. I was comparing this night and shared my story. It was the first time I'd ever done it. I felt actually sick when I spoke on that stage, because it was a really, really big evening. My parents were there, my friends were there. My story had gone on the screens around the football stadium. It was totally overwhelming. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? What did I think this was a good idea for? I kind of figured it could car crash my career, but actually at that point I was like, I just need to let this out. I need to get it out. If it could help one person, then it would have done more than enough. And so I spoke out and shared my story. The year later, I published my book, and I didn't really have any expectations beyond that. It didn't car crash my career. In many ways, it made things much better because I could be me. I could be authentically me, you know. I know that word authentic gets used a lot, but it's true. You know, I really could just be me. And here we are, 7 years later. I have a campaign that's gone around the world. My movement has sort of taken hold in pretty much every country around the world. That's called #NotMyShame. That was a movement I accidentally launched sort of 2 years ago. I have a safe space at the moment we have about 600 survivors in the safe space on a private group on Facebook that's managed by some incredible people, Sharon, Lynn, Joe and Kelly. They look after that space with me. We have a team of moderators, and that kind of looks after it. It's only for people who've gone through trauma as a child. And then I was also looking at, what could I do in the charity world? What can I take forward through my own lessons? And so Project 9010 was launched. Well, we went live last year, and now I have Project 9010, which is a charity focused on education, and we're looking at educating young people on helping them understand language, what trust, what's appropriate, what isn't. Looking at our training plans are called PACK, PACK, PACK for Life, and that's looking at permission, awareness, communication and knowledge. So we don't actually work with kids, by the way. We work with the safeguarding teams. They take it forward into education for children. So in a nutshell, Ashley, that is my world. My world is sort of long days because everything is just full on I'm coming to the end of my professional season now. We take a break before it sort of all starts again after the summer. But it's full on. I love it. Would I change it? No. I feel kind of privileged to be here now today in everything that I'm doing, from charity to my professional life, and also how it all works together. You really sort of look at it and you go, actually, it does work together, from the work I do with the children through to the adults in performing arts and fitness. That's all of that is sort of my whole life, my whole world. That's where I started. Those were the things that helped me unknowingly at the time, but those were the things. As a young performer, I performed professionally, but I didn't realize how impactful they were until sort of later on in life. So that's my life, Ashley, and I am pleased to be here to continue this conversation with you today. So thank you for having me.
No, fantastic. I think that's the longest ever introduction. There is loads to unpack there, EJ. Absolutely loads to unpack. Loving the lifestyle, the mindfulness, the healthy stuff. But we want to dig into your story. We want to showcase 9010 and what all that is about, and get a bit more comfortable talking about what happened. So please share some of your story of what you shared that night and what your book was all about, please.
So I grew up with my mother and stepfather. Every other weekend I would visit my father. I had siblings and step siblings around. Life was pretty good, it wasn't complicated. I had a cat called Honey and had some nice friends. And yeah, I think, as a young person, up until sort of around 9 years old, life didn't sort of, I don't remember it not being good, it was just a 9-year-old, a young life. And then I went on holiday, my mum and my stepfather, when I was around 9, we went to Greece. And we would go to a restaurant quite regularly where we'd made some friends and it was fun, and the waiters would smash plates and we'd go dancing and go and see the animals. So some of my favorite things here are dancing, fitness and animals, nature as well. But every night we went, the waiters would take the children outside to see the animals, and I'm like, yay, let's go, and you'd be outside, you could hear the party, the smashing of the plates, the music, the dancing, and it was a warm night. It was always felt nice. But particular night, one of the owner, I think he was a restaurant owner, not waiter, and he took me away from the other children. But of course, I'd already bonded with him over those sort of like the time we'd been there, so I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? I didn't know not to, right? I was just a child.
He's a grown-up. You're going to trust him, aren't you?
He's a grown-up, and that's what we're taught, right? We're taught to, not be rude to people we know. We're okay. We should shout and scream if a stranger did that, but not someone danger. We know. And that's a really important part of the work that I'm doing. So he took me away from the friends that I'd made, and he sexually assaulted me. Now, that incident was an isolated incident. It never happened again because I think we probably came back from our holiday quite soon after that. I don't really remember what happened. I just remember running back into the restaurant, running into the bathroom and shutting the door, and someone was trying to get me out. But that was it. That was it. That was an isolated incident. So fast forward a couple of years, it was a weekend to see my father. I loved my dad. He was really just brilliant fun. He was the handsome prince. He was the dad everyone wanted, And then on the way to horse riding, he pulled into a lay-by and said that there was a difficulty in our relationship, and that I had to consider a couple of options. And then the next day he called me and told me he couldn't see me anymore. Now, I was around 11, 12, and my world actually fell apart. I found out what broken heart meant, because actually when he said he couldn't see me again, he really meant that. I never saw him again.
Is this because you were with your mother?
It was a complication, really. I think, both my dad had, I was performing at the time. I was a professional young performer at that time, and I was always busy. And then he was doing the horse riding with me. And then this weekend to see him, the next one was falling on Mother's Day. And it was my weekend with him, and he wanted to see me. And I had the decision of, did I want to stay with Mum on Mother's Day or see him? And he, on the call, he said, look, if you can't see me that day, I can't see you again. But he meant it literally. So obviously Mother's Day, I'm like, I want to see Mum. But obviously, Ashley, it's a really long call, that would be, because there's obviously a lot of other stuff involved. But anyway, the bottom line is, don't ever do that to your kids. Don't ever give your child an ultimatum. I couldn't make a decision again for years and years and years personally, because I wasn't sure who I would lose next. So he broke my heart.
Can I just interrupt there a second? So you're going to horse riding. You've got a weekend with your dad. You love your dad. I've got 2 daughters, and the father-daughter relationship is incredible. So I totally get where you are. And he just turned around. That's it. We're done. And that was it. And then
I mean, I actually remember the call, and he said, have you thought about Mother's Day? And I said, yeah, I really want to see you, Daddy, but it's Mother's Day and I want to see Mummy. And I remember, and he said, well, look, you've made your decision.
You were 11,
12,
yeah.
And like I say, up until that point, he was the dad everybody loved. He was handsome, he was funny, he was like so funny. I mean, like, just brilliant. But he'd married again, had another family. I think maybe there was just lots of complications. But the bottom line is, people, do not do that to your kids. They are children, you are adults, and you need to find a way through, right? You need to make it about the kids.
Whatever stuff it's got going on, you've got to
whatever stuff's got going on, you've got to put that to one side and put your kids first. Anyway, my life fell apart that day. Broken-hearted was how I existed, really, and it took for all sorts of reasons. I struggled, but I also was very vulnerable, and that vulnerability made me a new friend. And he came to me, someone we knew, someone was in the family, and he showed up, right time, right place, and I bonded with this adult who groomed me and then abused me for the next 3-4 years. But when I look back, there was all sorts of upsets because of what my father had done, and not just to me, but to my other my siblings. But of course, that's their journey. If they want to talk about that. And so there was a lot of upset, a lot of noise. I think I went under the radar because of the upset that I was going through, that anyone was doing anything else to me, because the waters were already muddied. And So when I suffered at school, when I suffered and started drinking and taking drugs and smoking and getting it suspended and everything else, everyone just blamed it on the fact that my father had left me, which, of course, is true, right? I mean, I was broken. And then of course the reality of what happened at 9 flagged up. So I started to feel dirty, and I became quite obsessive about cleaning, and I have to have a bath every night before I go to bed and clean. And so there were lots of things that were sort of flagged up, but everyone just assumed it was because I was a broken-hearted child, which I was, but there were obviously other things going on there that needed to be considered, and they weren't. And that was a big problem for me because I just went completely under the radar. So that sort of like those years, 9 to 16, 7 years really, of just really sort of uncertain, insecure, vulnerable times, that affected my life. And I was abused, but also my mental approach to relationships, emotional approach to relationships, trusting people, and, finding a way that I could exist in a world with other humans without fear of sort of being hurt or dropped or damaged or abused. And that takes some time, right? It took a long time. I'm 51 now. And I think, I can sort of look back over the last 10 years and think it's probably the last 10 years that I've started to stabilize on this and not think that everybody's going to hurt me or, say goodbye. And
that is tragic. That is tragic because you missed the best part of your life, up until you were 50, 40. So in the last 10 years, yeah. We don't see that when we hear about children being abused. We don't see that. And let's say you went off the rails because you didn't have any guidance. You didn't have you didn't know who to trust. You didn't know who to believe, and you were just trying to find your way and cope in any way you needed to. And so that friend of the family robbed you of those 40 years.
Well, I'm sure if you spoke to anyone who'd gone through abuse, they will say the same. The friend of the family or the family member or the person that taught them, they've taken years from a person. And I often say this child abuse is tantamount to murder in many ways because you've taken that child. And, when I think, I don't really remember too much before the first assault when I was 9, but I do remember just those long, hot summer days with my friends enjoying. We had a cat next door called Scamp, and I always remember I can smell Scamp, and it was just, I don't know, happy days, right? I mean, happy days. And instead of which I've had to sort of really fight my way to exist in my world as Emma Jane Taylor. And thankfully, I got to a point where I feel stable with it. But so many people don't, actually. And, that's why I decided to stand up and fight, because it shouldn't be this way for any of us.
Yeah. And that's why your T-shirt says "Not My Shame," because it is not you. But when I've recently read an amazing book called Enough. And, it just seems that all these young children that have been abused, they think it's their fault. The abusers are very clever, manipulative, mechanically say the word manipulative, and the poor kid doesn't know any better. They think that's how it should be, and they just blame themselves, and they've got all that shame. So how have you overcome that? Have you had counselling or anything, Emma Jane?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had counselling. When I was about 13, I was thrown into psychiatric care by my school because they labelled me a juvenile delinquent and they were going to expel me. My mum was like, please don't expel her, let's do what we can. But of course, everyone still thought it was the fallout because of my father, which it was, but it was also much bigger than that because of the abuse. So I went into this psychiatric support that this school offered, but I don't think that was very helpful, really, because I wasn't able to truly share everything.
Can I
It was
ask, why couldn't, because, you know, looking now, you sort of like think you've just been put into juvenile delinquent. Can you just turn around and go, oh yeah, the only reason I'm here is because I was abused and it's this person? And why can't you say that? What were you going through? Can you remember?
Well, it's really traumatic when you are going through any kind of abuse as a child. And when you kind of look at children's development, young minds don't really fully develop until late teens, early 20s, some say 30s. Now, the impact of what's happened to us in childhood, whoever you are, whether you've gone through abuse or not, you tend not to speak out about people, right? You're scared. You don't want to sort of upset the apple cart. When someone has been abused for an amount of time and years, there's feelings, there's emotions, there's the bonding, you've been groomed, and you've probably heard the word trauma bond before, but you've got this trauma bond. So you don't want to speak out against someone who you've actually got a relationship with, and I use that term very loosely, but that's what they've done. They've manipulated the situation, so they've got your trust, and if they don't have your trust, they can't assault you, right? They can't abuse you because you're not going to show up, right? So they've got to mold you into a way that's going to make it easy for them to abuse, and that means they've got to show you the nice side of them. And actually, that's a very, very complex part of this conversation, is the nice side to them, because they aren't nice. But as a child, that's what they see. So you're not going to break that bond. So you're not going to speak up about it. And that's why I speak up now, because we need to help young people understand that, that's not the right way forward. It's not an acceptable behavior by any adult to a child. And we need to help children be protected because of it.
No, absolutely. And look, full disclosure, I've got a little grandson, and you're just like, I cannot imagine anyone doing anything to him, but we have to safeguard our children. So you've gone through the ringer, and from the outside, everything looks absolutely amazing. You're running a great business. You keep smiling. You're a very smiley person. So it's lovely to have you on the show. But so what are you doing, and how do we protect our children and our grandchildren? And what should we be saying to them, and things like that?
Well, I think firstly, thank you for having this interview with me today on this, because it's not a subject anyone really likes to go near because of fear. And I know that you were nervous about it because it's a scary conversation. Knowledge is really important. Understanding the impact of abuse is really, really important. So what can we do? Now, talking about it, listening to conversations, understanding the reality of abuse. So anyone who's gone through abuse will have gone through all sorts of hoops of fire to become a young adult into an adult. And so if they're talking to you about their story, it's not about giving advice. It's not about switching off. It's about leaning in. And that's a word people don't like to use these days. Authentic and leaning in. But we really need to. You need to allow people to be authentic. We need to lean into this conversation, and we need to understand the importance of empathy, not sympathy. I mean, this is about empathy, and empathy will help you better understand what people have gone through. I talk about my story, which many might think actually that's like talking about my story, but others will be going through something different, right? So I listen to them and lean into them when they're talking. So that's sort of from a survivor point of view, really, really understand the difficulty, because like you say, you've had a childhood taken. The child cannot flourish as they may or they should have done because of the restrictions they've been given because of being abused, stunted. I mean, for me, it was a late development of maturity, paranoia, OCD. I was bulimic, full of all sorts of disorders and addictions, trying to cope. So I couldn't actually flourish. I'm here today as a woman in business, and I've had that opportunity to, because I've had about 20 years of therapy to get to this point. Who knows where my life would have gone if I hadn't have gone through the abuse? But so many people can't get that far. So that's the adult side. From the children's side, we need to look at how can we protect children. Well, there's the obvious one, the phone. I don't know if you saw in the news today, there was a big story about that today, and how an 11-year-old was groomed online, and she had pictures sent to her. She sent pictures, they've gone everywhere. No one knows where they are. They're just huge, and of course now it's led to physical abuse. So that phone, I spoke to a 16-year-old couple of years ago, and she said she wished she was never given a phone at 7 years old. Well, you want to give a phone to a 7-year-old, then most adults don't know how to use like their phones, right? And you're asking a 7-year-old to have.
Are you muted?
That literally links to the whole world. Don't give a child a phone. Help them with the phone, right? Until they're 16, they're still seen as children here, right? So talk to them about what's going on there. Help them understand the reality of, if you're going to share a picture, whatever it is. I mean, even a nice picture can be sent to a million people quite quickly, and could end up in the wrong hands. And do you want that? I mean, do you want that? I mean, I see people putting their children publicly on posts on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I think, oh, they're really nice, but actually, right, they're public. You don't know who's going to take that picture of your child and take it into the dark web, and God knows what will be done because of that picture. So you want that? No, I don't think any of us want that. So those are the things. First of all, be cautious of the phone, be cautious of technology. Help your child with technology, help your child understand. You're not actually allowed, children aren't allowed Facebook and Instagram until they're 14. I still think that's too young, but adhere to that, right? They're still children. Adhere to that. Don't let them have this technology too young. And then you've got the conversations around, well, you know, the work that we're doing with the charity. What's permission? What's awareness? What's communication? What's knowledge? The pack for life. What does permission mean? You know, have that conversation with your child, because it's going to be different for every family. It'll be different for you as a parent and other parents. But, you know, I was taught to scream and shout if the man in the white van stopped and tried to get me in. Sorry, men with white vans. But that's what I was taught. And even today, Ashley, if I'm walking on my own and a van pulls up, I do get a bit, oh, wow. And of course, they're innocent, right? But that was what was drummed into us, stranger danger. Yeah. The reality is the 90-10 statistic. It's considered that 90% of children being abused are being abused by people they know, yet we educate 10% stranger danger. We're in the 21st century. We need to flip that conversation. I was never told to say no to people that I knew and loved. So understanding what permission means, how to have it in a way that is right, have that conversation in a way that's right for you, your family, and your child. And help them to be aware of conversations, but in a way that's not scary, right? You know, it's permission. Permission could be as simple as, you know, can I borrow your pencil? Or can I have a hug? Or can I have, you know, just gently. So children aren't fearful, but they're smart early on conversations that will expand as they get older. Being aware of your surroundings, being aware of where you are. If you're going to drop your 8-year-old child into town, do you want them walking down the back alleys? Do you want them walking out on their own? Do you want them, you know, getting on a train to London? Of course you don't. Well, I mean, I'm saying this, but I wouldn't imagine most people wouldn't. No. So just have those conversations and what it looks like, but in a way that's not terrifying, because we don't want kids to be scared of people that they know and love. We need them to be smart and savvy around people and humans. You know, when you look at the news today, I mean, abusers, they're hidden in plain sight everywhere, right? So just be smart about conversations you're having with your kids, and lean in and empathize to anyone who's telling you about their abuse.
Oh, lovely. So if someone's listening to this and they've had something horrible like this happen to them, how can they get in touch and how can you help them? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
It's quite sensitive, my mute. I've got my my website is emmajanetaylor.com, www.emmajanetaylor.com. If you go there, you'll find everything about my work, everything about my own story, my journey, and also all the social media that I'm on. I'm on everywhere. You can choose your fancy about where you want to follow me.
Oh, perfect. Emma, I'm afraid half an hour isn't long enough.
Wow.
But yeah,
quick, isn't it?
It has. Thank you so much. I feel a lot more confident talking about child abuse now, and I'd love you to come back. And I want to hear all about the happy times.
Because there have been happy times.
Yeah, like I said, you keep smiling, and you're doing.
Oh well, I think I'm now engaged and going to be married later on this year. So I got there in the end. I did trust and find my own love. Find love.
No. Good. That's congratulations on that. Sharing your story, has that been part of the catharsis? Is that something that you would encourage other survivors to do, or is it best if they keep it locked away?
So I have a disclaimer on this. If you go on my LinkedIn bio, you'll see there's a disclaimer on this, and I don't encourage anyone to speak up until they've better understood who they are, what they're doing, and why. Because it can be, my work has been seen more and more, which means that it attracts more and more people, and then with that you attract more and more trolls. And so trolls I couldn't probably have dealt with 10 years ago. Now I'm like, block, move on. But you will, once you start speaking out, not everybody is going to agree with you, not everybody is going to like what you have to say, but you've got to be prepared for that, right? And actually, how will you deal with that if someone disagrees with you and what you're saying? Like I said, I mean, I can pass it by these days. I wouldn't have been able to 10 years ago. So it's not glamorous being on a stage. It's not glamorous being on the TV or writing books or so on and so forth. The reason I do it is because the end goal is to reach survivors, make a difference, get the conversation seen, and to protect. Ultimately, my end goal is to protect children. So I know what I'm doing.
No.
Be clear about what you're doing before you do anything that could car crash or cripple your world in that you could speak out too soon, and it could be very damaging for you.
Yeah, no, but I'm so glad that you did, because we wouldn't be having this conversation, and hopefully this has made people be a little bit more aware of it. Emma Jane, thank you so much for coming on. I just want to just introduce my guest next week. Totally different conversation next week. I'll be talking to the cheerful HR consultant. So we'll be chatting to Nikki Biggood next week. And tomorrow, because I didn't have this amazing guest, I'm talking to Yvette Fitzhenry, who is going into social media in a big way. So we'll be chatting to her tomorrow on my other show. Emma Jane, thank you so much for coming on. Leave us with a word of wisdom before we say goodbye.
Being sexually abused is not your shame. It never has been. The shame falls solely at the perpetrator's feet. And that's a conversation not just for survivors to get their head around, but also allies. And the allies will be of great value to this conversation if they can just do what you're doing, Ashley, and lean in and understand and share the knowledge so that we can protect children today and into the future.
Oh, what a lovely way to end the show. Emma Jane, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you to everybody for watching. All of Emma's information will be in the podcast notes. If you're listening to this on the podcast, then get in and get in contact. Thank you very much indeed. Cheerio. You get out what you put in.